Good evening. How are you? This is a sit and talk because the weather was it was terrible this afternoon. I've had several thoughts about how to say this, and I think it boils down to the following: there is a toxic epidemic of lying on the part of a government that took an oath to tell us the truth and to preserve and protect our government, and that's not happening. Our government, as we understood it as a republic and as a democracy and as uh, a force for equal justice before the law, has been under assault ever since Trump stepped on an escalator and said he was going to run for president, and in part because there are Mexicans in America that shouldn't be here, and we're going to deal with them, and they're criminals and they're everything else. So when you set the tone that way, how can you go anywhere uh, in terms of leading the country into a future? So we have the lies, but now we have more than that. We take facts and we diminish them by the language with which we describe them. So what you think is then affected by what actual words are used to describe what's going on. So what makes me say this? What makes me to this point want to mention and focus on this is in the last several days we find out that Trump and Epstein were just tied to each other, blended, soldered together at the hip, and we find out that one of the reasons, plainly, why Trump has wanted to contain and withhold and prevent us from seeing what's in the Epstein Trump files is among the 1 million mentions there. In some location, there are 51 pages, and they were part of an investigation. And the investigation involved a young woman who gave a blowjob supposedly to the president, bit him in resistance, and he hit her. Now, the words blowjob are not being used. We have to replace them, or it gets struck. You haven't seen any major stories about it, but I think you will because it's undeniable and there's more going on. But this is what we have. We have networks and other outlets discouraging people from saying straightforward what I just said to you. Nothing I said to you is condemned to say. And here's the thing, that people would be so concerned about describing an event he did, but not be upset about the event itself. So it's like a punishment for telling the truth. And what is that? That is a diminution of our right under the First Amendment to speak the truth, to speak the truth to power. Now, I have often said, and nothing could be truer about this administration, is that we have freedom of speech, but it's a prepositional freedom, because for many, we don't have freedom after speech. And we've seen that in spades in America under this administration. You say something, A, you're ridiculed. B, you're lied about. 3, we find a way to diminish your ability to live. And all these are classic approaches by autocracies, by dictatorships, and that's what we're experiencing, that right there. And when network and other outlets are doing it, then the state TV expands and it controls the information we get. See pictures of 1984, Big Brother. The picture that Trump likes so much, they paste everywhere, I think it's his mugshot. And it's like very determined. And it's this terrible aspect of him. And what is it? It's about fear and it's about coercion. Don't mess with me because I'll take you down. And so we have people who are walking on eggshells. Now, we saw demonstrations in recent days of some people who say we're not taking it anymore, going back to these old notions of we're not going to put up with this. But it's interesting how we're instructed to weigh the truths we know. So, for example, we don't want you saying anything at the State of the Union that would contradict the president. And if you try to do it with a little sign, we're going to kick your ass out of here. What is that? If the First Amendment was first, in part because the people had to have a way to have access to government and to criticize it and to affect how government worked, that's what the First Amendment is about. But that does not serve their purposes to do what they want when they seize power and they're corrupt and they take funds and take care of themselves. That's just not right. So we're invited to serve in ignorance while the administration, so-called, by felon Trump, continues to abuse people, playing episodes, the nature of our government, everything. So we don't want to have anybody understand that he slapped this kid, do we? No, we don't want to have that. What kind of an image would we have? We'd have a truthful one. We've known this about this guy since before 2016 when he came on the national stage and decided to be the president of the United States. And he released the dragon of the disastrous amalgam of people who look at themselves and they're worthless and they fill themselves with this hate. And those people are our opponents. And while some may change, most will not. But there are more of us to fight back. And you want an example in which Trump will go out of his way to hurt people. You know, of course, you have the scene that was mentioned at the State of the Union in which Trump released this AI version that appeared to have former President Obama and Michelle as if they were monkeys. Who does that? A racist does that. A person who discriminates does that. A person who does not believe and love your brother as yourself. A person who has never felt that. He's the kind of guy who breaks things and takes to his advantage what suits him, and even turns on his so-called friends to embarrass and humiliate them. You know, as an example, he took the AI words and he put them in the mouth of an Ottawa Senators Brady Kachuk and had him attacking Canada because they had booed. And this didn't happen, and he didn't say it, and he's running around explaining to everybody, I didn't do that. He's saying, I never said those words. And this is the real fear in America. They talk about the truth catching up to the lie, and the truth is it gets away. What can we take from this discussion? There's a burden on all of us, particularly as we still have so many cowards in public government who hopefully will join the fight we're in time to save this country. I'm supposed to give a lecture sometime in March, and I've been playing with the title, and I think the title of the speech should be A Republic, if you can keep it. And that's in doubt right now. It's in doubt. How many people went? They didn't grab them and compel them to go. They didn't slap and beat them up if they didn't go. How many people went into that chamber knowing what Trump was going to say, and it didn't matter to them at all? How does that happen? What part of your soul becomes compressed and terrorized and afraid and trembling in the face of this kind of a government? And the answer is, that's a dictatorship. Why were they there? And then some who want us to believe that, they're only there because they brought a guest. Really, they brought a guest so they could explain in bullshit terms why they were there. And that's what we have to look at, people. We have to, we individually have to be naked to who we are. We make an error, we have to say it. We misspoke a word, we get angry. That's what real people should do. That's not this administration. They lie about everything. They lie about trivial things. They may get us in a world war. They're compromising people's health. They're compromising people's retirement. If you side with people who are the subject of discrimination, then you are worth discriminating against too. That's our problem. There's a recent short example. You may have followed my remarks about Jesse Jackson. And I was lucky to have some knowledge of him and his way and how he thought, particularly in the campaign in 1988 when I was a statewide co-chair in Virginia of his presidential campaign. And what I learned from that is that in the face of the abuse he got because his skin was the wrong color, and they didn't want that, uh, it was rough going. People would say and do things, and now it's legitimate again. And when he died, I thought, on balance, if you can choose a balance, whatever embarrassment he ever had was outweighed by the service he had to the notion of civil liberties, of all people, the rainbow of people, he called it, a quilt of which we are all a part. That's what he was about. And then there are people who hate and relish their hate and rub our noses in it. And then when they die, who do we celebrate? We couldn't get the government to lower the flag for Jesse's passing as he went from state to state to his birthplace to be buried. But Kirk, they lowered the flags for him. This is the problem with America. Things are upside down, inside out, and it's like you tore open the human body, and exposed to you is a heart that's endangered, lungs that can't fully breathe the air, strength going from your arms, less able to think and fight and argue. That's where they want us. But we're not going to go there. We're going to resist. We're going to preserve the republic. We're going to preserve our right to tell the government what to do with our vote. And we're going to treat people equally, equal justice before the law. So this is perhaps not the usual way I address, although it's somewhat. And I hope you found some aspect of what I said that's helpful to you to understand where I think we are. So all the best. With any luck, I'll be outside tomorrow. It won't be raining. Bye-bye.